Tonight, we bring you a story so extraordinary, so explosive, that it threatens to tear apart the very foundations of the Islamic Republic, a story of betrayal at the highest level. A story of a supreme leader hiding underground while his own son sells out the nation. A story that, if confirmed, represents the most devastating intelligence breach in Iran's history. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, the absolute ruler, the man whose word has been law for 35 years, is reportedly hiding in a secure bunker beneath Tehran, but he is not hiding from foreign enemies. He is hiding from the truth, because according to intelligence sources now speaking to Western media, Khamenei's own son, Mojtaba Khamenei, the man positioned to inherit supreme power, has been secretly selling Iran's most classified military secrets to the United States for millions of dollars. Missile locations, nuclear facility layouts, defense system vulnerabilities, Revolutionary Guard deployments, everything the Americans needed to know, handed over by the heir to the supreme leader himself. Tonight, we examine what we know, what it means, and why the Islamic Republic may never recover from this betrayal. To understand the magnitude of this betrayal, you must first understand who Mojtaba Khamenei is. Mojtaba is the second son of the supreme leader and, by far, the most powerful of Khamenei's children. While his siblings have pursued relatively quiet lives, Mojtaba has positioned himself at the center of Iranian power. He controls access to his father. He manages the supreme leader's financial empire. He commands the loyalty of key factions within the Revolutionary Guard for years. Analysts have identified Mojtaba as the leading candidate to succeed his father, either as a new supreme leader or as the power behind whoever officially takes the title. He was the insider's insider, trusted with the regime's deepest secrets, protected by his father's absolute authority, groomed for the ultimate role. And now, according to multiple intelligence sources, he has been passing those secrets to Iran's greatest enemy. The relationship allegedly began 3 years ago. Mojtaba, according to these sources, had become convinced that the Islamic Republic was doomed. The economy was collapsing. The proxy network was being systematically destroyed. International isolation was strangling the nation. He saw the writing on the wall, and he decided to secure his future, whatever that future might look like, the price of American protection. Information, the currency of survival. Betrayal. The first indication that something was wrong came from an unexpected source, a pattern of American military successes that defied explanation. Israeli strikes on Iranian targets had become uncannily precise, hitting facilities that should have been invisible to foreign intelligence. American operations against Iranian proxies succeeded with minimal resistance, as if the enemy knew exactly where defenders would be and where they wouldn't. Sanctions targeted individuals and entities that Iran believed were hidden behind layers of shell companies and false identities. Intelligence agencies began asking, how did the Americans know? The answer, according to sources now speaking, was sitting in Tehran all along. Western intelligence services declined to comment on specific sources and methods, but multiple former officials, speaking on condition of anonymity, have confirmed the broad outlines of what occurred. Mojtaba Khamenei allegedly made initial contact with American intelligence through intermediaries in the United Arab Emirates, a country that maintains back-channel communications with multiple powers. The first meetings were tentative trust-building exercises in which Mojtaba provided relatively minor intelligence to establish his credibility, but as the relationship developed, the information became more significant. Locations of underground missile facilities that Iran believed were hidden from satellite surveillance, technical details of Iran's air defense network, including vulnerabilities that had never been publicly acknowledged, deployment schedules for Revolutionary Guard units allowing American allies to anticipate Iranian moves, and most devastatingly, details of Iran's nuclear program, including the locations of facilities that international inspectors had never visited. The price for this information reportedly ran into the tens of millions of dollars, funds deposited in accounts outside Iran, accessible to Mojtaba whenever he chose to leave. He was selling his country's survival, and he was being paid handsomely for it. The exposure of Mojtaba's betrayal came through an unlikely channel: Russian intelligence. According to sources, Russian agencies detected anomalies in American intelligence collection patterns, suggesting a high-level human source inside the Iranian government. They shared their concerns with Iranian counterparts not out of altruism, but because Russian interests in Iran depended on a stable regime. Iranian intelligence, initially skeptical, began their own investigation. What they found was devastating: financial trails leading to offshore accounts, communication patterns that defied innocent explanation, meetings with known intermediaries for Western intelligence services, and at the center of it all, the supreme leader's son. The investigation was reportedly briefed to Khamenei himself 2 weeks ago. His response was not what investigators expected. Rather than ordering his son's arrest, rather than confronting him directly, rather than addressing the crisis openly. Khamenei retreated. He withdrew to a secure bunker beneath Tehran, a facility designed to protect Iran's leadership during nuclear war. He stopped making public appearances. He ceased issuing the regular statements that had marked his 35-year rule. He disappeared not from external enemies, but from his own government. Sources close to the Supreme Leader describe him as broken, unable to accept the betrayal, unable to act against his own son, unable to function as the leader Iran needs. The Islamic Republic is now effectively leaderless, and the man responsible for that leadership vacuum is hiding underground, paralyzed by his son's treachery. Let me walk through exactly what Mojtaba allegedly sold, because the details reveal the catastrophic scope of this betrayal. First, missile infrastructure. Iran's ballistic missile program is the regime's primary deterrent, the guarantee that any attack on Iran will be answered with devastating retaliation. That deterrent depends on concealment. Mobile launchers move constantly. Underground facilities hide production and storage. Tonight, Iranian state media, now under new management, confirmed that Hatami's forces launched coordinated operations on Revolutionary Guard command centers, including the Irg intelligence headquarters that had recently been fortified for what analysts believe was an anticipated internal threat. Hatami neutralized opposition commanders before Khamenei's loyalists could mount a counter-operation. They secured the state broadcasting center. They secured the nuclear command infrastructure. They secured the paramilitary Basij headquarters that were likely preparing to defend the Supreme Leader. In other words, Hatami targeted the nervous system of theocratic control, the communication and command apparatus that would have made resistance operational. This is what made Washington's warning so urgent. Khamenei's removal wasn't just symbolic, it was irreversible. It represented the kind of move that could destabilize the entire region if left unchecked, and the international community, understanding that, fully responded with caution. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but strategically. They didn't issue immediate condemnations. They didn't threaten military intervention. They opened back-channel communications with Hatami's representatives. They positioned naval assets in the Persian Gulf as a precaution. And here's where the story becomes even more extraordinary. Intelligence analysts now believe that Hatami's latest move was designed to exploit the fragility of Khamenei's succession planning after years of failed attempts to consolidate clerical authority. Hatami wanted to see whether the clerical establishment would rally behind the 85-year-old Supreme Leader. But instead, the opposite happened. The assembly of experts didn't mobilize in defense. They remained silent, with a coordination that was so immediate, so unified, that even Khamenei's closest advisors noticed. You don't get Iran's clerical establishment to stay quiet easily, but this week, Hatami did. Regional analysts speaking with Reuters under anonymity described the regime's collapse as a controlled demolition, a way to preserve Irani's state institutions while removing theocratic oversight. But the international community proved today that they remain both cautious and engaged. Their diplomatic responses were not only measured, they were coordinated so precisely that Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States issued near-identical statements within the same hour. That coordination matters because it shows pre-existing contingency planning. It shows that Western intelligence is not reacting blindly. They are monitoring a scenario they had war-gamed for years. As reports continued coming in throughout the day, we learned more about the scale of Hatami's operation. The Artesh regular military carried out a complete lockdown of Tehran's governmental district, forcing all clerical officials to remain in their residences. Cyber warfare units targeted Irg communication networks that had been upgraded in the last 18 months. Naval forces operating in the Strait of Hormuz reportedly secured all Iranian port facilities used by the Quds, forced to coordinate regional operations. This wasn't just a palace coup. This wasn't just a military takeover. This was a systematic dismantling of theocratic infrastructure. This was a reconstitution of Iranian state power. And reconstitution is the one thing the Islamic Republic has struggled to prevent since the 2009 Green Movement protests. For every internal security measure they have made, reformist elements have countered with something that exposed deeper fractures within the system. Remember, the Revolutionary Guard thought they had eliminated all internal threats. They thought the military was subordinate to clerical authority. They thought no single commander could ever consolidate enough power to challenge the Supreme Leader. But tonight, the exact opposite is happening. Amir Hatami has consolidated control of all major military branches. Clerical authorities have been sidelined or detained. The Supreme Leader is in exile, his location unknown even to allied governments. What makes this moment so unprecedented and so dangerous is that Khamenei's removal happened at a time when Iran is under extraordinary pressure. Hardliners want confrontation with the West. Reformists want economic normalization. The Irg wants to preserve its economic empire. Ordinary Iranians want an end to international isolation. Khamenei was balancing these demands while his health deteriorated and succession planning stalled. And when leaders in that position make sudden moves, they're not doing it from strength, they're doing it from pressure, they're doing it from vulnerability. The State Department's emergency statement, now being circulated to all diplomatic missions, was designed to signal that Washington is not willing to see Iran descend into civil war. Senior officials said plainly that Hatami's seizure of power was inconsistent with constitutional governance and international norms. That is diplomatic language for, we didn't authorize this, but we're not going to stop it either. You don't usually hear that tone from Foggy Bottom unless something serious is at stake. Meanwhile, Amir Hatami addressed the Iranian nation in a calm, measured speech tonight. He said, "The era of divided authority has ended. Iran will now speak with one voice." He said, "We do not seek conflict with any nation. We seek only the restoration of Iranian dignity." And he said, "Those who serve the previous system with honor have nothing to fear. Those who abuse their power will answer to the people." These are not rhetorical flourishes. These are statements from a military commander that understands just how high the stakes have become. Here's what makes the situation even more concerning. Hatami's latest move wasn't isolated, along with the removal of Khamenei's force. Commanders also were detained or placed under house arrest. The Guardian Council suspended all activities indefinitely. Hezbollah leadership in Lebanon increased emergency communications, targeting handlers seeking instructions. All of this happened within the same 48 hours. When a new Iranian regime moves multiple pieces at once, it means something larger is underway. Regional analysts are now considering several possibilities. One is that Hatami is preparing a pivot toward the West and economic normalization. Another is that Hatami is attempting to consolidate nationalist military rule while maintaining anti-Western rhetoric. A third possibility, the one worrying officials the most, is that Hatami is attempting to accelerate Iran's nuclear program without clerical oversight or restraint. But today, the international community took that card off the table. They didn't ignore the transition. They didn't immediately embrace Hatami. They didn't dismiss the nuclear concerns. They demanded immediate IAEA access to all Iranian nuclear facilities as a condition for recognition. What we're watching now is a test of Iranian institutional resilience. Hatami wants to see whether he can govern without clerical legitimacy. The Iranian people want to show whether they will accept military rule. The United States wants to prevent nuclear proliferation under a new, unpredictable regime, and Israel wants to prevent any continuation of Iran's regional proxy strategy. Tonight, we've heard from sources inside Tehran who are now monitoring popular reaction in major cities. They say the streets are quiet, not with fear, but with anticipation. They say many Iranians are cautiously hopeful that theocratic rule has finally ended. And they say Hatami's decision to remove Khamenei rather than harm him is likely part of a legitimacy strategy intended to prevent martyrdom narratives. But the region is not relaxing. In fact, every major power is repositioning assets and recalculating alliances. Their response today, measured, coordinated, and watchful, sent a message to Hatami that the world is watching every move he makes, and it sent a message to the Iranian people that the international community will engage with whoever can deliver stability. As the crisis goes on, we expect more details to emerge about what exactly the Supreme Leader's inner circle hoped to achieve. But what we do know is that Hatami's move was decisive. It ended 45 years of theocratic rule. It redrew the power map of the Middle East, and it created both unprecedented opportunity and unprecedented risk. What happens next will depend on what Hatami does in the next 72 hours. If he opens dialogue with the West and allows international inspections, this moment will be remembered as the Iranian Spring. If he consolidates authoritarian military rule, the international community has already shown they are prepared for containment. They have shown they are ready to respond. And tonight, for the first time in 45 years, the Islamic Republic appears to be finished. Calm is quiet, too quiet. And when Iran's clerical establishment is quiet, it means they are calculating their survival. It means they are choosing their next move carefully. Because tonight, the guardians of the revolution learned something they never believed possible: military power can override religious authority, popular exhaustion can paralyze resistance, and one determined commander can reshape a nation overnight. This story is far from over, but tonight, one thing is clear: Ayatollah Khamenei is no longer in Iran. Amir Hatami is in control, and the Middle East will never be the same. And we will be here, watching every detail as the next phase unfolds.